Mishra. India has underlined its commitment to supporting African countries as per African priorities and without conditionalities. While speaking at the UN Security Council open debate on challenges of maintaining peace and security in fragile contexts, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla said that India will continue to support Africa's aspirations and work towards empowering it for a future that is founded on the principles of inclusivity, sustainability, transparency, and socio-economic development with dignity and respect. Highlighting India's strong development partnership with Africa, Foreign Secretary said that New Delhi has reached out to 43 African countries, executed 189 developmental projects in 37 African countries, and around 77 projects are under execution, with a total outlay of $12.86 billion. In this edition, we'll analyze and take a closer look at the India-Africa ties. And joining us on the program, Mr. Gurjeet Singh, former ambassador, Major General SBS Thana retired strategic analyst, Ms. Ruchita Berry, Senior Research Associate, IDSA. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television to all of you. Ambassador Singh, coming to you first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has unveiled a set of 10 guiding principles that will dictate India's engagement with Africa. In a speech to the Ugandan Parliament in 2018, Prime Minister Modi outlined a vision for not just a bilateral relationship with Africa, but also a partnership at the global level. He became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Rwanda. How has it re-energized India's engagement with Africa?
Thank you. I think India's engagement with Africa is one of the success stories of India's foreign policy. It has seen consistent expansion, and as the Foreign Secretary has told the UN, it is growing day by day. Prime Minister Modi's landmark visit to Africa, during which he announced the India's Africa policy and its principles, articulated what had been done and what is going to be done in the future. So precisely the point is that India is going to manifest African aspirations. And I believe that whether it is in the sphere of strategic and political dialogue, or it is in the sphere of economic development cooperation, or in functional and human resource development cooperation, India has heard Africa and has worked with them closely ever since opposing apartheid to seeking their place in international organizations, including in the UN Security.
Right. You made a very important point there about seeking a place in the international organizations. Major General Asthana, India has called for introspection within the United Nations Security Council over the lack of representation of African countries among its permanent members, even though more than half of the issues on the agenda of the Council are related to the continent. Your thoughts, sir?
You are absolutely right, because the point is that bulk of the United Nations missions and peacekeeping missions, stabilization missions, protection of civilians missions are in Africa. The mandate is being set by the UN Security Council and primarily the P5 and South Africa. And so, in fact, in the African continent does not have a representation in P5. So there is no reason why it should not be there. Similarly, there is another set of countries which is headed by India, that is India, Brazil, and Japan, which is also called as G4. Now, in these G4 countries also need a representation in P5. The reason is very simple. As of today, the UNSC does not represent the developing world. The mandate is being formulated by somebody else. The troops are being given by somebody else. And there is a mismatch, a gross mismatch, a number of places. So therefore, I think there is a need for the reformation of UNSC, and it is a common agenda between India as well as the African continent. And I think South Africa is one of the major contenders. In fact, in last 2 to 3 decades, other than those 3 countries which I named, the fourth one being the Japan. So therefore, the need is there that we have to modify and we have to perhaps increase the size of the UNSC. One of the model which I've been suggesting a number of times is that you have the P5 plus 4 countries, that is G4 plus South Africa. If you have these 10 countries in P5, then what happens is 9 out of the 10 the largest economies are in these P5s. Maximum population is in these P5s. So this permanent group of 10 countries is a representative group. And I think this can work out better. And the remaining countries, there have been a model of Kofi Annan who had said 24 countries. That could be there. Or we could have 20 odd countries, depending upon as to what is the consensus at the UN General Assembly. So this is one part of it. The second thing is, we know that there are serious problems which are common to India and South Africa and Africa. In African countries, that is a group of those 54 countries, you find it is abundance of mineral resources, abundance of the human resources. You have everything. You have very good geographical location. You have all the sea lanes of communication passing through nearby. You have all kinds of resources. With the result, there is a power play, and this power play is also sometimes counterproductive.
Yes.
There is another angle where India needs to collaborate. There is the question of terrorism and the question of non-state actors.
Yes, sir.
This is so these are common problems and the common challenges. And I think when Prime Minister Modi says and when the Foreign Secretary says we have a lot of commonality, our problems are common, our goals are common, we both want inclusive development, and you in your opening narrative already mentioned the kind of infrastructure development which India is engaged with, and they all go hand to hand with the United Nations peacekeeping missions. And we are the ones who have taken part in the largest number of missions. And not only that, we have also had maximum number of casualties in Africa. One of the Captain Salaria, if you recall, the Paramveer Chakra, we have got it in Africa. That was in Congo. So India has contributed a lot right from Mahatma Gandhi days till date. And I think we both are in common platform, common goals. And I think it's a bond which is sentimental, economical, and whatever. In all forms of, engagement, we have a commonality.
Absolutely, sir. You're making very important points there. And since you're talking about contribution of India, I'd like to talk about new normal. Ms. Berry, India supplied critical medicines to several countries in Africa to help them fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Responding to the call of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, India has upgraded its peacekeeping hospitals in the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan during the peak of the pandemic. How are these measures during the pandemic shaping India-Africa ties?
I think it has rightly been pointed out that Africa is very important to India. This is something which we need to reiterate. And Prime Minister Modi has time and again said that for India, Africa is of highest priority. And this is reflected during the COVID times very well, because India has sent number of missions in terms of supply of medicines to the African countries to deal with the COVID crisis. And definitely, African countries have also acknowledged India's role in supporting the health concerns within Africa in the current times. But I think, largely speaking, there has been a focus on Africa in the recent years, and this focus is very visible in the fact that there have been a high level of visits to the African countries, which was not happening earlier. This shows that India is definitely interested in keeping its relationship with the African countries alive, a priority to African countries. When did we have so many visits by a prime minister to Africa, if not in the last 6 years? So So that shows that India is definitely interested in keeping Africa on top of its agenda. And the fact that India and Africa share a lot of commonalities also makes our relationship with Africa important. And the fact that the African countries have a lot of potential
Yes.
in terms of the economic potential. In the just before the COVID times, the African countries were among the top 5 fastest growing economies in the world. So that there is a different perspective which is emerging about Africa. Africa is no longer the dark continent; it's a continent which is the growth pole of the world, which has a number of innovations coming out of it. So it is important that this is reflected in our foreign policy too. So I'm sure India's relationship with Africa will grow in future because we have similar concerns, whether it is in development, whether it is in security. We share similar concerns about global governance. We both want to be on the high table at the UN Security Council. So these are some of the issues which bring both India and Africa together. And I'm sure in future too, this priority will continue for India vis-a-vis the African countries.
Ma'am, you made a very important point about economic potential. Ambassador Singh, India's trade with Africa has grown from 5.3 billion in 2001 to 62 billion in 2018. India is now Africa's third largest trading partner, accounting for 6.4% of African total trade. But China has surpassed the United States, and it is Africa's largest trading partner. Both India and China have fortified the Africa outreach. How will New Delhi keep pace to balance China's expanding geopolitical presence in the Indian Ocean?
So I think you have raised 2 important points. Let's take the Indian Ocean first. So I think we need to de-emotionalize India's Africa policy. We tend to get very emotional with our past. But what Prime Minister Modi said in Uganda was that let's contemporize the relationship. So today, the east and southern coast of Africa is part of India's Indo-Pacific policy. It has a new dimension to it. So when we are going to deal with China or with other partners, we are going to deal in this construct. So China has a base in Djibouti, but India has access to the French, American, and Japanese bases there. So I think India is challenging the Chinese approach in the Indian Ocean. But on many things, India and China work together. For instance, in fighting piracy or in making sure that illegal fishing doesn't take place. These are the common objectives which Africa wants, which India does. But the contention comes on economic issues. There is no doubt that China's investment, development cooperation, and trade with Africa is far, far larger than India's. But as my African friends used to tell me, China does more, but India does better. So the quality of our engagement is actually better. And I think that is what India needs to focus on and make sure the quality further improves. To the lines of credit which the Foreign Secretary mentioned in his speech, India has got now outreach to over 40 African countries. Now, this had never happened before. In the last century, for instance, that we didn't have Indian companies operating in so many places. This has led to an increase in trade. But please remember that Africa actually runs a trade surplus with India. And this is because of energy security being diversified by India into a large number of African solutions. And with Mozambique oil and gas fields, with Indian investment coming on stream, this trade, particularly on energy, will further expand. So you will see more Indian investment in new things like gas fields, ports, infrastructure, and in return, you will get energy. At the same time, India must not forget to invest in SMEs.
Yes.
Now, the period during which the loans were going, I think that period is coming to an end. A new wave of FDI-led economic engagement is required. India should support the private sector to invest more in Africa. And with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area coming into force this year, more regional markets will come into place. So whereas earlier African producers were looking at European markets for export, today they can turn inwards and look introvertedly at regional markets in which India can play a much bigger role with them. So more Indian FDI and more Indian focus on the Indo-Pacific, both will create a new paradigm of collaboration, which is far more sustainable than what the Chinese have ever done in Africa.
I'll borrow a sentence that you said, that quality of our engagement is better than China. But talking about another important aspect, Major General Asthana, India and several African countries have pledged to deepen cooperation to combat the growing threat of terrorism and preserve maritime security by sharing information, intelligence and surveillance. We also saw the first India-Africa Defence Ministers Conclave in Lucknow. Now, India has key role as net security provider in Indian Ocean region. How do we build a case for stronger counter-terrorism ties between India and Africa?
There are many areas where these ties can be enhanced. The ties already exist. We already have the African officers, military officers coming here and doing training. We already have academies of India, training academies of India in a number of countries in Africa. We already have their officers coming for even basic courses, that is basic tactical courses for the counter-insurgency and counter-terror operations in India, the Indian schools of instructions. So we do have ties already. The second level of ties is when we go for peacekeeping missions. Even in these peacekeeping missions, you would have seen that we have the Indian contingents have performed better. The Indian contingents' outreach to these countries had been much better. An example of the biggest example which I would like to quote is of all women contingent to Liberia. And can you believe it that when this all women contingent for the Liberia has been one of the most successful missions of United Nations, number one. Number two, when this contingent was about to leave, the president of Liberia had to tell the contingent commander that looking at you ladies and the lady police officers, most of the girls here want to get into police. Otherwise, they used to run away by looking at police. So that is the kind of societal change which the Liberian contingent of India brought in there. So that was one major issue. The second engagement which I am looking at, that is the future part of it, is that we are now improving our defense production capability. Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the way we are going to perhaps improve the defense production, we could be selling a fair amount of low technological equipment, certainly at a much lower price, and which our reliability is much more. Secondly, as Ambassador brought out, the confidence level on Indian products is much more. And the intent is the main thing, that everybody by now in the world knows that Chinese investment is exploitative, whereas India does not have global ambitions. India does not have an ambition to exploit or become a superpower or world superpower or something of that kind. So therefore, when we are engaging for mutual development. When we say win-win, then it is actually win-win. When China says win-win cooperation, it is actually China-win cooperation. So that is another issue. Right. Thirdly, a biggest example is China never gave troops in UN peacekeeping, and they all of a sudden started. Now they want to develop it almost 3 times. And bulk of the troops, they want to send it to Africa. Why? For the simple reason, because now they want to exploit African resources. And that is why they want to increase the footprints there. They call it quote unquote operational experience, but it is actually not operational experience. They want to increase and ensure that the energy sector and all the resources there are well within their kitty, and nobody else disturbs their ambition of trying to exploit them. So these are some of the ways where I think India could score a point over China. And I'm sure we are doing much better in a number of fields, including whether it is education. A lot of education teachers are there.
Right,
Also,
sir.
tele-education, telemedicine, and e-network. I think we have done much better.
Let me take that to Ms. Berry. Ms. Berry, a resurging Africa and a rising India can give a strong impetus to South-South cooperation. Areas of untapped potential between the two, according to you?
Both. I agree with you that South-South cooperation is the main, kind of logo with which India and Africa countries are cooperating. We are both following the same principle of South-South cooperation, and which especially for India, means that we respect the wishes of the African countries. It is demand-based. Our cooperation is demand-based. We are not imposing our own priorities on the African countries. And here, any kind of cooperation that we are doing with Africa will have to be on a consultative mode. So what would be our future cooperation with Africa will depend on what the African priorities are going to be in future. And this is something which comes out if you look at their plans and their priorities as they have developed. So Agenda 2063 is one of these plans which has come out from Africa, which talks of various priorities, whether it's development, whether it is security, or it is human resource development. And if you look at India's engagement with Africa, human resource development has been one of the pillars of India's engagement with Africa. Africa has a number of young people there, African and like India. So in order to bring the empower the youth, it is important that we help the African countries in terms of human resource development, in terms of providing technical education or enhancing their education through various means. And here the e-Vidya Bharati initiative that India has launched comes forward. So